All right, fellas, got a quick podcast here, and we're going to talk about freedom. We are going to talk about our move away from freedom and our fear of freedom. With each decade, we are becoming less and less free. We're voting in policies that inhibit our freedoms rather than allowing us to be responsible for our own lives. And this is done for a couple reasons. One, stupidity. We're going to cover that another time. The other is fear. People are afraid of responsibility. They don't want to be responsible for their own lives, their futures, their financial management, whether they choose a good product or a bad one. They don't want to think for themselves. So they vote in policies that take from the rich, or take from, not even from the rich, from those who are willing to pay taxes. They increase regulation on those willing to risk and start businesses, which makes no sense because you want the individual to have the freedom. You want the government to control what the individual is doing, but we're afraid, so we're voting in these policies, and we're afraid of responsibility and self-reliance, so we're voting in these policies. Then there's the fear of safety. We'll talk about arms. People don't want other people to be armed. They don't want law-abiding citizens to be armed because they're afraid of what their capacity then becomes. If you have a gun, you can obviously do more harm than if you don't. The problem is where there's an armed populace, especially in the United States. If you look at where there are looser gun laws, violent crime is lower. There's less rape, there's less murder. Violent crime is lower because people are equipped with the capacity to defend themselves. If you look at places, take Chicago, very slack gun laws. Take Detroit, very slack gun laws. Crime is rampant. It has a lot to do with cultural things, the family, the horrible atmosphere in some of these cities, in the inner cities and stuff. But where there's an unarmed populace, criminals don't obey laws. They've got guns, so no one's there to defend themselves. Again, it starts out of fear. It starts out of fear for the gun. What that does to a person's capacity. They don't think about freedom. They don't think about someone's right to have a gun. They just think about the increased capacity. This goes even towards dogs. People are now trying to ban large breeds, quote unquote dangerous breeds, because of the potential harm that dog can do if it falls into the hands of a bad owner. They don't go after the owner, they go after the dog, and some of these are wonderful dogs. If you know about my dog, I got a great dog. Technically, it's a dangerous breed, and yet he's the biggest pooch and the biggest suck you'll ever find. Again, we're inhibiting freedom because of fear. Recently, I bought a house. I opted to move 13 hours away from my home city because I could afford a house further away from my home city. I couldn't afford a house in my home city. I have to either buy a little condo, apartment, or rent. So I moved away and I bought a house because that is more freedom. The problem is that our land ownership's a myth in many of our societies. This isn't my land. My land rights go only so far. I can't cut down a tree. I can't do this to my yard. I can't do that to my yard. It's not actually my land. It's the government who opposes regulations on my land. That makes no sense. My land. And yet all these rules and regulations were started by people who fear the capacity of what someone could do if their land is truly theirs, if they're allowed to have a gun, if they're allowed to keep more of their money. If people are allowed to keep more of their money, the belief is that they're going to be able to keep more of it, do more harm with that money than they will do good. But if you look at when the most charities were started in the United States, it was at the beginning and toward the beginning of the 19th century, toward the end of the 18th century. This was when America was at its economic freest. It's when when America had the freest markets they've had in their history, and this is when charities were started. People care about other people, so you have to get rid of this fear that the big bad boogeyman is going to do something bad to you. He's going to sell you a bad product. He's going to do something bad to his land that's going to affect your land. He's going to shoot you. He's not going to shoot you. He's not going to do something bad to his land. You have to accept responsibility for yourselves, and the people that are leading this charge are the bleeding-hearted modern males. And this is scary because it's men who started this society. It's men who fought for freedom. It's men who fought and died so we can have liberty. And yet we are willingly and blindly giving our liberty and our freedom away because we're scared to work, because we're scared to be responsible, and because we're just damn well scared. That's all I have to say for this podcast. It's be aware of what the decisions your fear is leading you to make. And choose to vote, choose to think, choose to act from a position of strength and from a knowledge that evil exists. There's nothing you can do. You're never going to rid evil from the world, but you have to defeat it, you have to acknowledge it, you have to name it. And so that's how we're going to end the Average to Alpha podcast. Think, act, and live from a position of strength. And man up. All right, guys. Talk to you fellas soon.